So we started this lesson on Friday and we're gonna finish it today. So we are on this page right here. And the first thing we're gonna talk about today is how do you measure an angle with a protractor, okay? So first of all, the way that your protractor is you're gonna line up the bottom of the protractor with the bottom of the angle, okay? So that is what you guys are going to do. This one, it's up a little bit, but yours should be where you put it on the bottom. Now, one thing that's a little bit confusing with the protractor is when you are measuring an angle such as this, notice that when you measure this angle, it goes through at 50 as well as 130. And you have to decide which one do I use for that. And there's two different ways you can think of it. One is your angle is opening up from here, so you want to use that inside where it's starting at 0 and going up, okay? So if it's starting from here, that's what you do. If it was starting from here, and let's say your angle looked like this, oops, that's not gonna let me do that. But imagine that I have an angle drawn like this, then what you would do is use where it starts from 0 here. Another way that you can think of that is this blue angle is less than 90 degrees. Okay, 90 degrees is straight up, so this is less than that, so you're going to use the one that's less than 90. Okay, now if I look down here, this is something that I believe you all know, but we'll review this. So in our class, for something to be a right angle, they would either tell you it's a right angle or they would have a little box in the corner. If it's in color, it's usually pink, and that tells you that is a right angle, and which is 90 degrees. The other thing I want to show you, because this is something you need to know today, is that if you ever have an angle like this, and let's say they said this is A and this is B, C, and D, and they had a little box here, and they asked you to find the measure, this little M means measure, of angle ACB. Okay? How many degrees are in a straight line? 180. So if this is 90, what would you think that is? 90. So if there's ever a straight line where one angle is 90, the other one automatically is 90, so you wouldn't really even have to use your protractor there. You would just know that this is 90 degrees, and then they'll want you to say, is it right, acute, or obtuse? And 90 degrees is right. Then if we look at an acute angle is less than 90, okay? So this angle is smaller than a 90-degree angle, it's acute. An obtuse angle is bigger than 90, okay? So this one's bigger than the 90-degree angle, so that is obtuse. Now, what you're going to do when you go to measure your angle, okay, I know a lot of you have, actually yours might actually be off, kind of like this one was. The ones I have over at the middle school are different. But what you're gonna do is where this semicircle and that line come down, so you guys all, I think, have something like this, okay? Where this line comes down and meets this, you're gonna put it right here. And then you're gonna line up where that line is going across, and like I said, on some of your protractors, it might be up from the bottom. You just line that up here, okay? And this first one asks us to find angle MJP. Now, do we really even have to measure that, MJP? Because this means what? It's right. So we're just gonna say 90 and right. Okay. Then they ask us for LJP. So again, putting your protractor here, it looks like it is going to go through, is it about 110 or 70, or is it different than that on yours? Or maybe like, did you get like 105 maybe, and 75? What sounds more like common sense wise? Which one should we use there? The 105, right? And when you have to measure with a protractor, I always give you leeway on both sides. So let's say the answer is supposed to be 105 and you put 108, that's okay. If you put 101, that's okay. As long as you're close, you would be fine. But let's say this one was 105. It's bigger than 90, so what would we say? It's obtuse. Good. All right. Now they ask us for angle NJP. That is this little angle here. Okay. And if you line up your protractor on that, do you guys get it to go through either 20 or 160 about? Yeah. Okay, which one of those would we use? 20, because that's a very small angle. And 20 would be what? Acute. Very good. All right. Now if we go down here, same thing. This one is asking us for angle AFB. So now what you're gonna do is line up the bottom line with this line, and then look at where it crosses through. Is it like 25-ish or 20 or 160? And wouldn't that little angle AFB be the 20? And again, if you got that to be 25 or 18 or 22, that's okay. But that is acute because it's less than 90. Now they ask us for angle CFA. Do you guys all see this one? We shouldn't have to measure because CFE is a right angle. What would CFA be then? A right angle. Right? Because those two form a straight line. If one's 90, the other one's 90. So this would just be a 90-degree angle, which is right. Okay. Then they ask us for AFD. So again, you're going to line up your protractor. And do you get it to go through like maybe 120 around? Or not? Or more like 115-ish? 115-ish? Okay. So again, if it's 115 and you're off a little bit, if you said 120 or 110, somewhere in there, that would be fine. What would that be then as far as right obtuse acute? If it's 115, it is obtuse. Okay. And then they ask us for angle CFD. So this one is a little bit harder because we're not lining up with the bottom, okay? So angle CFD, if I show you, you could either turn your protractor this way and line it up so the bottom of your protractor goes here, all right? Or you could turn it this way so the bottom of your protractor lines up here. What do you get for that one? 25? Okay. So this one, if it's 25, what would that be? 25 is acute. So there's like 5 or 6 questions in your assignment today that you are gonna have to measure with a protractor. And on your quiz, just so you know, I did write up on the board, your quiz is on Wednesday, but on your quiz, you do not have to measure with a protractor. Instead, they would give you angles like we just did, and they would just say, is this angle acute, right, or obtuse? Okay, but you don't have to actually measure them on your quiz. All right, so last week we talked about congruent segments. So today what we're gonna talk about is congruent angles, okay? Whenever you have congruent angles, if I were to draw them, they look like this. If this angle was congruent to that angle, I would draw like one arc in each of the angles. If this was A, and this was B, and this was C, and then let's say this is D, and this is E. If I needed to write that those two angles are congruent, I would have to use 3 letters. Okay, I couldn't just say angle B. I'd have to use 3 letters, and I would say angle ABC. And then if you remember what the congruent symbol looks like, it's an equal with a squiggly above it. And then for angle, this angle, it's angle DBE. Alrighty? So those 2 angles then are congruent. If I then wanted to say that these 2 angles are congruent, but different than those, what I would do is use 2 arcs for each of those. And then I could say angle ABD is congruent to angle CBE, which of course would be the same as angle EBC. So whichever way you wanted to write that, B would just have to be in the middle. Okay? If you look down here, here's another drawing. Notice these 2 each have 1 arc, so they're congruent. These 2 have 2 arcs, so they're congruent. Okay? Now this part talks about an angle bisector. And what I talked about was when you have an angle bisector, if you ever hear the word bisect, think of cut in half. So what an angle bisector does is it cuts the angle in half. So if this is my angle, that makes this congruent to that if YW, ray YW, is an angle bisector. And then what we could say then, if that's a bisector, is angle XYW is congruent to, whoops, that's bad, is congruent to angle, and we could say angle either WYZ or ZYW. Alright. Then if we go to our last page here, this is probably the harder thing that you're going to be doing today. And my advanced geometry students at the high school took the test that you're going to be taking, one very similar to on Wednesday. And the last page of the quiz is on this. And I would say some students that decided whether they got an A or a B on the test. So this is important that you understand. So here's what this says. You always have to look up in the directions, and it says that KN bisects angle JKL. So here's ray KN and angle JKL, so that means this angle is congruent to that angle, okay? That's important. If you didn't know that, you wouldn't be able to do the problem. Then they say angle JKN right here is 8x minus 13, and angle NKL right here is 6x plus 11. Now, when it bisects that angle, that tells us these two are equal. So what we would do there is just set those two equal to each other. We would say 6x plus 11 equals 8x minus 13. And then go ahead and solve that. Now when you have x's on both sides, you want to take the one x and bring it over to, I always take the smaller amount of x's over to the larger. Right now that's a positive 6x, so I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. And I get 11 equals 8x minus 6x is 2x minus 13. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is add 13. 11 plus 13 is 24, and that equals 2x. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve that. So I divide by 2, and x is 12. Now, if you look back, this is another thing that happens with this. And in fact, on your quiz, what I do is I have 2 blanks. So one, you would find what x is. The second one, you'd find what they're actually asking for. So each of these questions is worth 4 points. So what I want to do now is find the measure of angle JKN, which is 8x minus 13. And I'm going to take this 12 and put it in there, okay? So what you would do, you would go 8 times 12 minus 13, which I believe is 83. And that would be your answer for the measure of angle JKN. All right? So there'd be 4 points for that problem. 2 for this and 2 for that. Then if I go down to this one, it says, suppose the measure of angle JKL. And one thing I should have said before I started that is this one, in this one, KN bisects angle JKL, okay? So that is going to give us the same thing as this previous problem where these two are equal. Now, what they're telling us here is that JKL is this entire angle, is 9y plus 15. And then what they say is angle JKN right here is 5y plus 2. Now, these two are equal. So if this is 5y plus 2, this would be 5y plus 2. And that's the trick for doing this one. If this is 5y plus 2, so is that. And then would you guys see how you could write an equation there? Yeah.
The magnitude halves to make 10y plus 4.
Yep. And then set it equal to this whole thing. So we would go this plus this equals that. So if I wrote that out, we would have 5y plus 2 plus 5y plus 2 equals 9y plus 15. Now if you skipped a step there like Braden did and added these in your head as you wrote that down, that's okay. 5y plus 5y is 10y, 2 plus 2 is 4, and that equals 9y plus 15. Now what I'm gonna do is bring my y's to one side. I have 10 of them on this side, 9 of them here, so I'm gonna bring the 9y over. It is positive, so I'm gonna subtract 9y. 10y minus 9y is y, plus 4 equals 15. Okay, then to solve for y, I'm gonna subtract 4, and I get y equals 15 minus 4 is 11. And then you always have to check, did I find the right thing? And I believe on the quiz for these, you would get 2 points for this, and then it would also ask you to find this. And the measure of angle JKL is right here. It's 9y plus 15. So then what I would do is take this 11 and put it in there. 9 times 11 is 99, plus 15 is 114. Okay. All right, so now because I gave you part of this assignment on Friday, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a review too, so give me a second to come up with your assignment here. You'll use the protractor on 5 of the questions, but just hold on for me to give you the review here. Okay, so that is what you're going to do. And then the first ones are the ones you need your protractor for, those first 5 or 6. Once you're done, put it into the basket. And then that second assignment is kind of a review of what we've done so far. When you come in tomorrow, you guys will take a practice quiz, and that will be just like what you'll be doing on Wednesday. It's just gonna have all of the different kinds, and then we'll see how you do on that on Wednesday. It'll have everything from the chapter.